Greetings friends! First of all, there is no official connection between Elden Ring and Dark Souls. There are mixed signals in that regard sent by Miyazaki and George Martin. The first says that this is a new universe, while the latter that this is a sequel to Dark Souls 3, and some say that this world is a painting of an NPC artist from Dark Souls, but it's all speculation, and officially, at least for now, Elden Ring is set in a new world and a new universe. That world is called Lands Between. Middle-earth was already occupied. Once upon a time, life was born in the crucible of our world, whatever it was, and in place of the crucible itself, apparently a huge tree has grown. Meanwhile, the so-called outer gods were hovering in space. Each one of them had their own desires and their own ideas about how things should be, but the most noticeable in this story is the outer god known as the Greater Will. He sends his messenger to the lands between, the Elden Beast, who, having come to our world, turns into the Elden Ring. The Elden Ring is something like the World Stone from Diablo. This is the DNA of our world in which the fundamental laws of the lands between are preserved, according to which it functions. With the help of this ring, the Greater Will dictates the basic rules of our existence, that there is, for example, a cause and effect relationship, that in the event of death this happens and the soul flies there, and so on. The Elden Ring consists of segments, and each is responsible for something different. How much this new order differs from the previous one, and according to what laws the lands between lived before the appearance of the Elden Ring in it, we don't know for sure, but it looks like the differences are significant. In addition to the Elden Ring, the Greater Will settles giant fingers in the lands between, which express the will of the will. And there are special immortal fortune-tellers priestesses who can read on their fingers what this outer god wants. Moreover, instead of that huge tree which in all likelihood grew on the side of the crucible, another huge tree arose, this time a golden one, the so-called Earth Tree, exuding the energy of the Greater Will and feeding this new world order and all these startups of the new god. Moreover, the so-called grace begins to fly in the air, indicating to the subjects of the Greater Will where to go and what to do. And yet again, moreover, the Greater Will appoints a woman named Marika as the goddess of the lands between and the guardian of the Elden Ring. And as her first big thing as a goddess, Marika takes the Rune of Death out of the Elden Ring, as a result of which death in the lands between disappears. People stop dying, crucified on crosses, groan and cannot find peace in any way, once normal people, having lost their minds from eternal life, wantonly wander around the area. You saw this if you played Elden Ring, and the explanation for this is the removal of the Rune of Death from the DNA of the world. Instead of rest, the spirits of the dead are sent to the Earth Tree for processing and back to the material world. This, by the way, explains the mechanics of summoning spirits. We pull them out of the Earth Tree. This order of things, in which the Greater Will rules everything, a golden tree rises above the lands between and no one dies, was called the Golden Order. Although, in fact, death hasn't completely disappeared. Marika didn't destroy the Death Rune, she took it out of the Elden Ring. Marika herself has this rune, and with its help, Marika can single-handedly decide who should really die if they have to. There is no death, but if Marika needs it, there is. And the Rune of Death is guarded by Marika's faithful familiar Maliketh. After dealing with death, Marika begins to practice birth, and from the great warrior who took the name Godfrey and the title of Elden Lord after the wedding, gives birth to children. Two turn out to be deformed, unsightly and with horns, the so-called omens, and they are sent to live in a dungeon, but one child still comes out right, beautiful and without horns. He is called Godwyn, and he is Marika's favorite. But Marika's husband Godfrey is a great warrior not only of love, he leads an actual army through the lands between, forcing the Golden Order. Because there are factions in the world who do not want to obey. These are agents of competing gods, giants, dragons, the Academy of Mages, and Godfrey and his army are driving through them quite successfully. Very big problems, however, are caused by the Academy under the command of Queen Rennala, but it appeared to be possible to deal with her non-violently. Another great warrior from Godfrey's army, Radagon, falls in love with Rennala. Radagon and Rennala form an alliance. The war between the Academy and the Golden Order stops, and Radagon and Rennala have children, of which Princess Rani is the most important for our story. After democracy was successfully spread across the lands between and the Golden Order had no major enemies left, Godfrey became despondent. The sparkle in his eyes disappeared, the energy of the trees stopped flowing through him. We don't know the details, but Marek eventually drove him out of our world and sent him outside to look for adventures, to learn something, to go out of his comfort zone, and maybe, having gained more strength, he would return someday. And together with his army, Godfrey, excommunicated from grace, left the lands between. These exiles, with Godfrey at their head, are called Tarnished. The holy place is never empty, and in place of the departed Godfrey, Marika takes Radagon away from Rennala and marries him. Radagon becomes the second Elden Lord, and Rennala becomes a single mother. To summarize, previously the warrior Radagon was with the sorceress Rennala, and now he is with the goddess Marika. Together, Radagon and Marika make more children, but the main plot twist is that Radagon and Marika are the same person. What does this mean? How could they make children then? How to explain the marriage of Marika with Godfrey and Radagon with Rennala and then Marika with Radagon if Radagon and Marika are the same person? These are excellent questions, which I wish you luck to find answers to. Whether Radagon used to be a separate character and with Marika's marriage he became one with her, or they were always two aspects of the same personality, we don't know for sure. And this is not a game in which you know things for sure. Even Marika doesn't know for sure what is going on in Elden Ring, and begins to doubt the Golden Order. Is she doing everything right? Is the Golden Order golden and in order? And either because she began to doubt, or because she was already old, or because the government should be replaceable, Marika's time as a goddess is coming to an end and a younger one from among the worthy should take her place. For example, Rainy, the daughter of Rennala and Radagon. She is one of the official candidates for the goddess. We don't know exactly what requirements are put forward for candidates and how they are selected, but we don't know a lot of things in this world, and yet this is what it is. But life is complicated for Rani. On one hand, she would like to become a goddess, but on the other hand, unlike the doubt in Marika, Rani doesn't doubt but firmly believes that the Golden Order is evil and a dictatorship, and doesn't want to be a puppet of the greater will. And she comes up with the idea of killing her own body, but leaving her soul intact. By doing so, she will get rid of the control of the greater will, which apparently controls her through the body. However, her soul will continue to live and even be able to become a goddess. It isn't necessary to have a body for this. By doing so, she will get rid of the control of the greater will, which apparently controls her through the body. However, her soul will continue to live and even be able to become a goddess. It isn't necessary to have a body for this. Though to kill someone, you need the Rune of Death. Therefore, Rani gathers like-minded assassins from the Black Knives clan and steals a fragment of the Rune of Death from Malakath. The next difficulty lies in the fact that it is impossible to kill only the body with the help of the Rune of Death and not to touch the soul. The Rune of Death can't work halfway and it needs to kill both. For every dead body there must be a dead soul. Nowhere, however, does it say that it should be the soul and body of the same person. So Rani kills her body with a fragment of the Rune of Death, but the soul she kills is the soul of Godwyn, Marika's beloved son. Rani then settles in the body of a doll with 4 hands, free from the control of the greater will and its fingers, and aims for the throne as an independent candidate. Marika, either because her beloved son's soul was killed or because of her disappointment in the Golden Order, freaks out and breaks the Elden Ring. Radagon, the male aspect of Marika, for some reason tries to repair the ring, but unsuccessfully, and its fragments, the Great Runes, scatter around the world and get all sorts of bosses, different demigods and great warriors. And the one who collects these fragments will be able to restore the Elden Ring and, if desired, change it to their taste, as Marika once did by removing the Rune of Death from the ring. Now it's time to ask, why did Ranni kill Godwyn? Why couldn't she kill some dog instead? There is no clear answer. Ranni is after all Radagon's daughter, and therefore, in a sense, Marika's as well, and one can easily imagine that she needed a soul of the appropriate caliber. Or that she was trying to inflict maximum damage to the hated Golden Order, and in this case, she succeeded. The Order was destroyed along with the ring. But all this is speculation. Why it was Godwyn, nobody knows. Someone had to be. The Greater Will reacts to the destruction of the Elden Ring and locks up Marika, who destroyed it, and Radagon, since they are inseparable, inside the Erdtree. After that, Grace calls us, Tarnished, from the exile back to the lands between in hope that there will be a hero among us who can collect enough great runes to repair the Elden Ring and become the new Elden Lord, that is, to take the place of Radagon. The current royal couple doesn't fulfill its functions, no matter how you look at it, and some replacements are required. And for many years the Tarnished, led by Grace, the golden dust floating in the air and pointing the way, have been trying to get the fragments of the ring, and still they can't. Bosses who keep the great runes would also like to take the throne and are in no hurry to part with the runes, and to take them by force isn't easy, unless you're some sort of a speedrunner. So the Tarnished begin to tarnish again. Without achieving success for a long time, they gradually lose their connection with Grace, it becomes less visible to them, and eventually they cease to see it at all. And here we are, a tarnished no-name. We probably died somewhere in the outside world and are reborn in a tomb in the lands between. We sing Grace that tells us the way, and we begin our journey trying to collect the great runes and repair the Elden Ring, because this is what the Tarnished do. Very soon we meet the ghost of a girl named Melina. This is an important character for the game. She gives us a horse and announces that she will help us on our journey, and basically she performs the role of the Firekeeper from Dark Souls, but she is bigger than that. Melina, I must say, shares some similarities with Ranni, besides the fact that they have the same face, both have no body, and both for some reason have one of their eyes closed, and in some scenes with Ranni we clearly see that she has a shadow that shares a closed eye with her, and for Ranni it's the right eye, and for the shadow it's the left one. Some speculate that these are two aspects of the same person, or that they are sisters, and so on. As usual, the game doesn't give us clear answers, or any answers, honestly, and this is a very fertile breeding ground for fan theories. We also know that Melina was born in the Erdtree, but Marika and Radagon are imprisoned in the Erdtree, and besides them, as well as the Elden Beast who also lives in Marika, there is no one else in the tree. So we can assume with some certainty that Melina is the daughter of Marika and Radagon, and if so, then she really is the sister of Ranni, the daughter of Radagon and Rennala. This being said, here's our plan for the game. Following Grace, take away the great runes from the bosses, defeat Radagon, take his place and restore the Elden Ring. As for the bosses, we kill them and take away the runes. The problem is that Radagon and Marika are locked in the Erdtree, which entrance is blocked by indestructible thorns. For some reason, and this is a big and still unresolved mystery, the tree doesn't let anyone in. But we don't abandon our plans, we still want to become Elden Lord, and the only way for us to get into the Erdtree is to burn this tree together with thorns with the help of a special ritual, and for this we must do two things. First, we kindle a flame, of course we do, in the Forge of Giants. This is a huge ball on the top of the mountain, and only here one can make a fire strong enough to burn down Erdtree. And that's where we need the help of Melina, who on behalf of her mother, that is apparently Marika, helps us and burns herself in the Forge of Giants to kindle the flame so we could burn the Erdtree with it. But fire alone, even it is so special, isn't enough here. For the Erdtree to burn down, we need both the magic fire and the Rune of Death. Therefore, we fight Malekith, to whom Melina teleports us before kindling the flame. We win, of course, take the rune, and that's when the tree really burns. Its thorns are gone, and we finally can enter the trunk. Godfrey, Marika's first husband, who's also returned from exile and who's here apparently for the same reason as us, will try to prevent us from getting inside. He also wants to claim the throne he once held, and isn't going to give it up without a fight, so he gives it up with a fight. After defeating Godfrey and entering the tree, we meet quite buttered Radagon, in whose chest one can see the Elden Ring. We kill Radagon. The ring inside him turns into the Elden Beast, we kill it too, and now nothing prevents us from repairing the Elden Ring with the runes we got and becoming Elden Lord. However, before we do this and begin to discuss the endings, I want to ask us all a few obvious questions. Why doesn't their tree let us in if we're here to repair the Elden Ring, the source of their tree's power? Why do we have to fight the Elden Beast, which is the embodiment of the Elden Ring, if we are here to repair this very ring? It looks as if the Greater Will doesn't want us to get into their tree, fix the ring, and become Elden Lord. And here I want to remind you that Melina, and these are bare facts and logic, no speculation, was born in the Erdtree, where is no one but Marika, Radagon, and the Elden Beast. That's why she is almost certainly the daughter of Marika, well, if not of Radagon and the Elden Beast. But even if this is the case, which would be crazy, even if Melina is the daughter of Radagon and the Elden Beast, still Radagon is Marika, and therefore Melina, being the daughter of Radagon, is the daughter of Marika. Unless, of course, she is the daughter solely of the Elden Beast, whom she calls Mother, which is unlikely. In short, we need to try really hard to come up with a situation in which Melina is not Marika's daughter. And we know that Melina, on behalf of her mother, that is apparently Marika, the one who doubted the Golden Order before breaking the Elden Ring, burns herself and the Erdtree so that we can enter it, and we do so in defiance of the Greater Will, which for some reason doesn't want to let us in. And inside the tree we have to fight Radagon, who tried to repair the ring, but not Marika, who broke it. Marika, who's doubting the Greater Will, doesn't interfere with us. Radagon does, as far as this separation is possible at all, given that these are two aspects of one person. And after defeating Radagon, we fight with the ambassador of the Greater Will, the Elden Beast, that is, with the embodiment of the Elden Ring, which for some reason doesn't want us to fix it. The Greater Will doesn't want to see us in the tree, doesn't want to see us as Elden Lord, and doesn't want to let us near the ring. But Melina, and therefore Marika, do. These were facts and logic. Now here's my conclusion. Melina and Marika believe that by getting to the ring we will change the world for the better, in a way that the Greater Will not like. Looks like pure facts aren't enough to make sense out of this story, and without certain assumptions, I'm afraid the motivation of the characters in this game cannot be explained. So, we have defeated everyone, and we see the Elden Ring in the destroyed body of Marika Radagon. Depending on what quests we did during the game, we have different options that lead to different endings. The default one, that doesn't require doing any extras, is to repair the Elden Ring just barely with a minimal set of runes. The game doesn't show us Marika alive, but it shows us how we restore her statue containing her soul or something, become Elden Lord, that is, the spouse of Marika, and the Age of Fracture begins. We don't solve any global problems of the lands between, nothing changes fundamentally, the ring is still slightly fractured, but at least it doesn't get worse either, and our character gains power. What they will do with it remains behind the scenes. Or, if we paid attention to the fans of the Golden Order, Brother Corin and the Gold Mask, who studied the Golden Order and built theories on how it could be improved, then another ending becomes available. Both of these NPCs eventually die under unclear circumstances, and the mending rune of the Perfect Order can be looted from the Gold Mask's corpse, and if at the end of the game we insert that rune into the Elden Ring, then we, still become an Elden Lord, will begin the Age of Order. By and large, this is still the same golden order that was with Marika until she broke the ring, but more golden. In theory, this rune eliminates the shortcomings of the Golden Order associated with the flaws in the characters of people and gods. Basically, this means, apparently, the cessation of conflicts on ideological grounds. The reign with this rune is no longer fractured and comes a stable and lasting dictatorship of the greater will in the lands between, where no one really dies. The next ending is focused on a character named Fia, who tells us from the very beginning that she is willing to hug us as much as we want, which once again confirms the reputation of video games as entertainment that only appeals to the male fantasy. Fia is a fan of death. When she hugs us, she sucks a little of our life force out of us. From a gameplay point of view, this is not that bad and even kind of good, since it is reversible and is compensated by some buffs, but lore-wise it's pretty creepy. She gathers our life energy to give it to Godwin, the half-dead son of Marika whose soul was killed by Rani. Godwin, when his soul was killed but body remained alive, became the first who lives in death. This is the official name, those who live in death. In a simpler game, he would be called an undead or a zombie, but this is not a simpler game. And when Godwin's living but soulless body was buried in the roots of the Earth Tree, the roots began to rot from such a neighborhood, and the souls of some people after their death stopped traveling into the Earth Tree for recycling as it should be under the Golden Order. As a result, some people, and not only people, got into an abnormal situation. They cannot die because the Rune of Death has been removed from the Elden Ring, but they also can get reborn. Due to the rotting of the roots of the Earth Tree, the cycle of rebirth has been disrupted, and the tree no longer accepts the souls of some of the deceased. So, hollow bodies, moving skeletons, devoid of souls, are found every now and then in the lands between. The undead. The Golden Order pursues the undead because it considers them unnatural, however, Fia is sympathetic to the undead. And if we accept Fia's philosophy and let her hug us, no matter what, then she asks us to get her the mark that the Rune of Death left on Rani's body when she killed it. In a normal situation, the Rune of Death leaves a round sign on the victim's body resembling a black sun, but since the effect of the rune was divided in half between two people, Godwin and Rani, the rune left a semicircle on each. We already know where Godwin's body is. It is buried in the roots of the Earth Tree. It is not a secret. So we are tasked by Fia to find the second body, the dead body of Rani. We find it, remove a semicircular mark from it somehow, bring it to Fia, and she, having joined the semicircles into a circle and sated with our vital energy, spends the night with the body of Godwin and becomes pregnant with the mending rune of the Death Prince from him. That is a Japanese game, folks. Fia dies because of this. We find her dead next to Godwin's body, take the mending rune of the Death Prince from her corpse, and can now use it in the ending to repair the Elden Ring with it. And in this case, we still become Elden Lord, but the age of the Duskborn comes. The mending rune of the Death Prince legitimizes the state of those living in death in the ring. Instead of a bug, they become a feature. This is now the default scenario for everyone who dies. In short, a zombie apocalypse. Georgiy becomes Dimitrescu. Another depressing way to end this game is to contact a serial killer named the Dung Eater. He kills people and defiles their bodies with a special seed that curses his victims and not only deprives their souls of the opportunity to return to their tree, but also turns them into mutant almonds with horns and very dry skin. And if we feed the Dung Eater with his own seed with which he defiled corpses, I know how it sounds, it will kill him, and from his body we can take the mending rune of the Fell Curse. And if we use it to fix the Elden Ring at the end of the game, then we will get an ending that is generally similar to the previous one where we befriended Fia, but instead of zombies, people will turn into almonds. We still become Elden Lord. Now let's talk about the ending, which many, including me, consider good, given the standards. We can bring Rani to power. To do this, we pay attention to her, protect her from enemies, and find a special dagger for her in the underground city. With the dagger, she kills Two Fingers, messenger of the Greater Will, who sent assassins after her and generally fought her in every possible way because she openly opposed the Golden Order. And if we did all this for her, then after defeating Elden Beast, near the ruined statue of Marika will be Ranni's summon sign. If we use it, Ranni appears, scatters the ashes of Marika's statue in the air, and takes her place as the goddess of the lands between. We still become Elden Lord, but with Ranni instead of Marika. Ranni plans to use all her newfound power to rid our world of the influence of the Greater Will, and for this, she and the player's character being the center of the political system established in the lands between by the Greater Will, the king and the queen of the system created by the Outer God, also leave our world and together go to the stars on a 1,000-year journey, so that there is nothing left of the Greater Will in the lands between, not even us. Thus comes the Age of the Stars. So it all started with Ranni and it ended with her. First she organized the assassination of Godwyn to get rid of the power of the Greater Will, and in the end she got rid of it. And here it is very important to know that in the English version of the game, monstrous, factual translation errors were made. When telling you about the Ranni's ending, I based my narrative on the original Japanese version, and in it, Ranni quite clearly states her plans. For example, she says that she will make it impossible to feel the Golden Order, believe in it or touch it, whereas in the English version she says that feelings, faith and touch will become impossible. There is quite a difference. In the original dub, Ranni promises to rid the world of the Greater Will, but in the translation, she promises to rid it of feelings and thoughts. And finally, there is an apocalyptic ending when we side with the Frenzied Flame. If, during the course of the game, we meet Three Fingers in a secret location, which, unlike Two Fingers, don't represent the Greater Will but another Outer God, the Frenzied Flame, then these fingers give us a Frenzied Flame with which we can light a fire in the Forge of Giants without the help of Melina. And unless we use a special magic needle to get rid of the energy of the Frenzied Flame living inside us, then of all the endings we will be able to choose only one: burn the whole world down to completely reset all the mistakes accumulated in it. And if Melina lives to see this finale, she promises to find and kill us. She obviously doesn't like this ending. And now a little conclusion to all this. Over time, we began to forget what AAA games are. We have almost been convinced that AAA is when a lot of money was invested in development, and as a result, oxymorons were legitimized in the industry: low-quality AAA projects, hacky, expensive games. Elden Ring reminded us what AAA really is, so that no one forgets. And I wouldn't like to introduce the quadruple A rank, because this would allow hacky, big-budget games to keep the status of AAA, and they don't deserve it. No one except some publishers needs this inflation of titles. Elden Ring is AAA. It is a colossal and yet very tightly packed open world that encourages exploration. You get your nose into every corner of the lands between, not out of perfectionism, and not out of fear that you haven't found anything worth exploring yet, but what if this particular corner is worth exploring and you will miss it? We can't allow that, so we gotta make sure we check it out as well, just to be safe. No. We explore Elden Ring because we know that getting your nose into different corners is rewarding. The exploration of this vast, immense world doesn't turn into chores. You don't vacuum the map like an apartment. Clean here, there, here in the corners with a narrow nozzle. Phew, all done. Not very interesting, but necessary. Exploring Elden Ring is interesting, and even with the copy-pasted content, it's still an open world designed conscientiously. It is the conscience of the developers, the fact that they make a game and not just master the budget. This is what distinguishes the AAA Elden Ring from the AAA Assassin's Creed Valhalla and a million other lazy products. All other differences are derivatives. In one of the interviews, Miyazaki told how the artist who drew Guinevere with huge breasts for the first game was so pleased with the result and so inspired by his own work that Miyazaki didn't even dare to argue with him about whether such ladies were appropriate in Dark Souls. And besides the personal preferences of individual artists, this little story tells us about the emotional investment of developers from FromSoftware in what they do. My next point is that the open world, I believe, has solved one of the main problems of the Dark Souls series. All the previous games of the series consisted of 10% of traveling through an excellent, handmade, high quality and the extremely saturated world, and of 90% of skipping everyone and everything on the way to the boss whom we're trying to kill for the 45th time. Everyone is annoyed by this waste of time on the road because you walk for 2 minutes and then die in 5 seconds. That isn't fun. But if the developers put bonfires closer to bosses, we wouldn't spend much time in that awesome environment the artists created for us. We wouldn't return to it. Therefore, in Dark Souls, the bonfires are at a distance from bosses and we return to certain places after each death. But this is a forced return. We don't enjoy it, we tolerate it. FromSoftware has chosen the lesser of the two evils. In Elden Ring, this problem was solved without evils at all. The bonfires are right next to the bosses, but you still explore the world because it's open. You come back to have a closer look, and you want to spend time checking every corner. That is an elegant solution. Next point. Even though the game is poorly balanced, it is well balanced. The number of OP builds has reached a point where almost everything is OP, and this is a balance. There are more excellent builds in Elden Ring than in any other Souls games, and this includes hybrid builds. The game encourages the inclusion of spells and melee builds much more. Unfortunately, even though the game is well balanced, it is poorly balanced. The AoE of bosses is a mess, it is pure evil. If you just remove all AoE from Elden Ring, it will become a better game just for that. Double bosses are still a thing, even though all the mechanics of all Souls games are rebelling against that. Everything, including the camera, target capture, weapon movesets, character mobility, all this here is for fighting bosses one-on-one, and nevertheless, FromSoftware continues to subject us to Japanese tortures and forces us to fight 2 bosses at once, or even 3 bosses, by the way. And there is a certain cruel logic in this. Players have always suffered from that approach and still have been buying FromSoftware games, and just in case it's safer not to change it. I think that was the developers' logic behind this game design. In addition to that, the Elden Ring has become even faster. Dark Souls series is accelerating all the time. The third game, it would seem, has reached the limit and there was nowhere to increase the speed, and still, the enemies in Elden Ring are much faster and more aggressive than the enemies in Dark Souls 3. Unlike us, we are still the same potato with unresponsive controls. In order to somehow help us out with multiple bosses and their increased speed, the developers have introduced spirits, pocket NPCs that can be upgraded and summoned to fight on our side against most bosses. These spirits perfectly cope with their task and really distract enemies' attention, which makes battles with several opponents at once less chaotic and disorderly. And these spirits are clearly part of the balance. It is assumed that we will use them. They are given attention both in the lore and in the plot. We are sometimes rewarded with items necessary for upgrading spirits, and one of the most notable NPCs here is the NPC for leveling up spirits. Also, some optional bosses, as well as some bosses near the end of the game, are so difficult that using spirits while fighting them seems to be just fair. Even with spirits, these bosses make you sweat real hard, and if you fight them without spirits, it feels like hell even by the standards of the series. Moreover, the game forbids us to summon spirits for some bosses, so it looks like the game has it under control and doesn't allow us to get help of an NPC when it's not proper. They send us clear signals: if you can summon a spirit, do it. The problem is that if we listen to these signals and adhere to the principle, spirits are not cheating, and this feels like an arguably adequate principle when we fight against some bosses, then spirits trivialize 90% of all other bosses, whom we could normally kill without spirits. If you always summon spirits, then most of the game becomes uninterestingly easy, and if you never summon them, then part of the game becomes unreasonably messy and we don't use the mechanics that developers wanted us to use. As a result, each time I had to decide on my own whether the boss deserved the summoning of a spirit or not. If the boss seemed difficult to me but fair and interesting, then I tried to deal with it all alone. And if I realized that it was just some BS, I called a spirit. But this approach is worse than perfect because it means that the player doesn't trust the game and has to come up with the balance on their own. You know, it's nice when you can trust the game, when you don't have to adjust the balance. After the developers, we're supposed to push hard, not to slow ourselves down. And the last problem of Elden Ring that I would like to mention, and already have actually, is copy-paste of content, mainly copy-paste of bosses. The same bosses are found in different variations every now and then. They move to the rank of ordinary monsters, or they're combined with other bosses, and it turns out like a new boss. You have already fought with A and with B, and now you will fight with A and B at once. A whole new boss. Yay, content is easy. Especially dragons have suffered because of this approach. They're almost all the same, but one has fire coming out of his mouth, another has eyes, the third has some kind of cosmic energy, the fourth has lightning, the fifth has nothing, and there is a whole zoo of dragons. In this context, it is impossible to have any complaints about the endings of Mass Effect, I'd say. And if at first these dragons cause fear and interest, then closer to the middle of the game you begin to avoid them, not because you're afraid, but in order to not waste time. And this scaling of content in Elden Ring is put right and left, which on one hand can be understood given the scale of the world, but on the other hand, I would prefer a smaller world and a shorter game, but without that many repetitions. And these problems, some imbalance and overuse of the same content, are what separates this great game from being perfect. This beautiful, interesting, huge and conscientiously made game has flaws. Thank you for watching. Just so you know, I'm planning to release a video that will cover the plot of all Souls games, including Bloodborne and Sekiro. There is also a video about the plot of all Diablo games on the list, and many other videos are coming, so please subscribe to not miss them. And as usual, have fun, stay tuned, and see you soon.